Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and today I'm making a bit of a follow-up video from one I did back in May 2018 called the 50 most popular Fire Emblem characters not yet added into Heroes. So basically in the series I take the data from the Choose Your Legends popularity poll and I gauge the 50 most popular characters as voted on by the community who have not shown up in Heroes in any shape, way or form. So that does not include seasonals, for example. So for example Louise or Charlotte, who are there in their bridal forms, they're not going to be part of this list because they have shown up in Heroes, even though their original characters have yet to be added. So, turns out actually, according to the last list that I made, that around 40 out of the 50 characters featured in that video have actually shown up, so it's a very good indication of who we're going to see added in 2020. So, I've used the numbers from the previous Choose Your Legends, that's the third one, and I have basically just compiled a list of the 50 most popular characters who have not shown up at any rate, in any shape, in any form. So, the characters on this list, you can probably expect to see a lot of them added into the game come 2020. So, with that out of the way, let's begin with number 50. Coming in at number 50, we have Vika from Radiant Dawn, the Raven girl, who has basically no dialogue in the game, but people really like her because of her design. Now, when I last made this list, there were no beast units in the game. We didn't even know if we were going to get beast units, so there were a lot of Legoose characters on there. There's still going to be a lot of Legoose on there, but they've actually added most of the popular ones into the game at this point. But Vika, I could definitely see her show up on Atelia's banner. I imagine she'd be similar to Nesala, she'd be a blue beast flyer. I think she'd be probably faster than Nesala, but maybe less bulky. Or maybe she could be sort of like a 4-star Democh version, like a poor man's Nesala, if you will. That is like more accessible to everyone else, but with less stuff, but she'd still be really fast. I think that's probably how she'd be added into the game. Coming in at number 49, we have KELLAM, the Armor Knight from Awakening. KELLAM was actually a very big meme back in the Awakening days. People would often come into message board and post like blank images and go like, check out my KELLAM build or something like that. And whenever someone would post KELLAM, people would be like, why'd you post a blank image? I feel like that was a meme that quickly outlived its welcome, but it was kind of funny for the short duration it remained relevant. So I think if there was an Awakening banner back in the day, back in those days, then KELLAM would most likely be on it because of the memes. As for a unit, I imagine he too would probably be sort of like a 4-star demote, probably just be a regular armor knight, you know, he'd be a blue lance armor with some generic skills on him. I don't really see him coming with like a very advanced kit or anything, and he's a little bit of an afterthought, so I don't really think he'd be something important, but again, I see him as being sort of like a 4-star demote. Coming in at number 48, we have KRIS from Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War. And I think KRIS could probably be added both as a blue lance flyer or a red sword flyer, because she could use both swords and lances back in that game. And it would honestly be kinda cute if she came with the Fury skills, just as a bit of a nod to the old translation patch where she used to be named Fury. I don't think they would do that, but it would be kind of cute. As for a unit, I imagine she'd just be really fast. I think she'd be super fast, because she was really fast at base back in FE4. That was pretty much the only thing she could do, so I don't know, lots of speed, not a lot of anything else. Next up at 47, we have RICKEN from Awakening. And RICKEN is a character that I think could both be added as a green tome or a red tome. He came with an L-Wind, and canonically in Heroes, wind mages have been green mages, but I think he could equally be in red mage, honestly. Again, he'd either be like a 4-star demote, or he could just be on the banner regularly. I imagine he'd be a bit of a glass cannon, like a lot of attack and speed, not a lot of anything else. Probably would come with Glimmer, or something along those lines. RICKEN is a bit of a hard unit to rate, honestly. I think I'm not sure if he's very popular. He's part of the archetype that's all about like, ooh, I'm young, don't treat me like a kid, which I don't think those characters have been very popular. If you look at other RICKEN incarnations, they do tend to be pretty disliked, so I don't really see him showing up on a banner anytime soon. Again, it's going to be a lot of Awakening characters on there, because I feel like, funnily enough, Awakening banners have been sort of underrepresented lately. I guess people just aren't that interested in them, so it would be interesting to see. Next up at 46, we have Seahark from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, the Myrmidon who just wants to protect his catgirl waifu. So Seahark, he'd obviously be a red sword unit, and he would most likely come with a slaying edge, probably Moonbow or Luna as his skills, but I imagine that he would also have some sort of synergy with beast units. Either some sort of skill that grants him or the beast units next to him bonuses, or maybe he could just, like, I don't know, come with fortify beasts or something, even though he's not a beast unit himself. It would be kind of cute. They definitely should make it so that he synergizes with Legoose in some way, because that's his entire gimmick in the Telia series. He sort of fights for the oppressed Legoose. Next up, at number 45, we have female KRIS, the avatar character from the Japanese exclusive Fire Emblem 12 Heroes of Light and Shadow. Now, KRIS is, I mean, I gotta admit, at least the female design is kind of cute. Female avatars have historically been pretty, but I really don't think this one's gonna be added to the game because, unlike some of the other avatar characters like Corrin and Robin, who have strong identities as their classes, KRIS can sort of be anything. Like, when you start the game, you kind of get a choice to be pretty much anything you want. You're gender locked to certain classes, like male KRIS can't be a Pegasus Knight, for example, but I don't really see what they would do with this character, because, like, really, depending on your playstyle and your experience, your KRIS could have been anything from a Cavalier to an Armor Knight to a Fighter. So, honestly, if they were to add KRIS to Heroes, they'd either have to just, I don't know, give him some sort of generic class, like a red sword unit, or maybe a cav, I don't know. But I actually think that because there is no clear identity for KRIS, we won't actually see KRIS added to the game. That's just my theory, but, you know, I could be wrong. Next up, at number 44, we have Midori, the female ninja from Fates. She is the daughter of Kaze, who was added into the game a while ago, also a very popular character. And Midori was a very interesting character back in Fates. I never unlocked her myself, so I don't have a lot of personal experience with her, but I remember meeting her in a couple of castle battles, and she was very infamous because of her personal skill. So basically how Midori used to work is that she had a skill that would increase the activation rate of any luck-based skill by 20%. And that includes skills such as Miracle, which allows you to survive with 1 HP when you take a lethal blow. Now, Kaze, her father, had a personal skill that would grant Miracle to whoever he was paired up with. So, you know, you put Kaze, you pair him up with Midori, you have Kaze in the back, Midori in the front. Kaze gives Midori Miracle, and she has her skill which increases the proc rate of Miracle by 20%, which pretty much meant she always procced it if she had enough luck. So I imagine you could probably incorporate this into Heroes in some sort of funny way. Like, I imagine she would come with Miracle as her base skill, and then maybe have some other skill that, you know, whenever she takes a lethal blow or something and Miracle procs, maybe it resets the proc rate of Miracle, or maybe like reduces it by 2 turns or something. I imagine they could do a lot of fun stuff with this, just creating a really annoying ninja dagger unit that is just really hard to kill. And if you give her some sort of maybe the renewal skill so she heals a little bit, that'd be a lot of fun actually. So yeah, or maybe like a dagger that steals HP, I don't know, something fun you could do with Midori for sure. Just turn her into the annoying unit we all remember her as in Fates. Next up, at number 43, we have Sonya from Blazing Sword, the big titty goth morph GF that infiltrated the Black Fang. You know, basically just a sex morph created by Nurgle to seduce guys. So, you know that her art would be quite something. I mean, she had huge tits in her original art, and you know, Heroes is infamous for amping up bust sizes. Just look at Ursula. So Sonya's tits would be like Loki plus. Like, I imagine her damage art would be something to behold. As far as the unit goes, I think she'd be a colorless mage. I think that would probably work really well for her, seeing as she's all about like being a morph, you know, cold and emotionless. The colorless would just look good on her, I think, because it matches her color scheme. But I suppose she could also be a blue mage if you really wanted her to be. And I imagine, like, you could build Sonya one or two ways. You could either make her sort of like a support unit that grants a lot of buffs to herself and the unit next to her to kind of symbolize the fact that she infiltrates and works and turns people against each other, and she's sort of like a support unit. Or you could go the complete opposite way and you could make her like a solo mage with like a bunch of solo buffing skills to indicate that, you know, she kind of hates being around other people. She kind of just, you know, want to be on her own. Because, I mean, Sonya's kind of like, she's very good at seducing people, but she also hates those around her. So it'd be a bit interesting in how you actually wanted to build her, whether you want to buff her as a supporting unit or a solo unit. She could work as either one, obviously, but, you know, it'd be interesting to see what they could do with her. And, you know, titties. Humongous titties. Up next on the list, we have our first meme pick. At number 42, it's Brigand Boss from Fire Emblem Echoes. And this is the guy that you meet down in the Thief Shrine. He's the guy that holds Silk captive. And why is this guy even on here? Well, on the Choose Your Legend list, there were a couple of characters that kinda people didn't really realize why they were there. Maybe they were there as jokes, or maybe the people who made the list just put them up there because, I don't know, they didn't really know better. But yeah, Brigand Boss was a candidate that people could vote for, and as a result, people started memeing on him, and they started campaigning for Brigand Boss, and as a result, he picked up quite a lot of votes, and as a result, he's on this list now. I don't see them ever adding Brigand Boss into the game, simply because he just doesn't have a name. I mean, he could be like an April Fool's banner. I could definitely see them putting him on there, and that'd be really fun of them to actually acknowledge the meme. But I don't see them adding him in as a series unit, because he just doesn't have a name, so it just wouldn't work like that. If they did, though, it'd be hilarious. It'd be a nice PR move for them, I think. I think they'd get a lot of attention if they did, but I just don't see them being that in on the memes. And besides, if they should have added him, they should have added him while the meme was still relevant. Right now, the meme is kind of dead, but, you know, when Choose Your Legends 4 rolls around, maybe they'll revive it. You never know. Up next, at number 41, we have the Goddess of Order from Radiant Dawn, Ashura. And I definitely see them adding Ashura as a mythic unit, considering they have added Yune. And as a unit, I think she'd be sort of the polar opposite of Yune. I think that would be a kind of a nice touch, or maybe that she'd counter her in some way. She'd probably be a flying unit, since most of the mythic heroes are flying. So she'd probably be like a blue tome flying unit, since Yune was a green tome. So, I don't know if she'd be countered by Yune or if she would counter her, but she would definitely need to be the polar opposite of Yune in every way. So if we take a look at Yune as a unit, Yune has like a lot of res, not a lot of defense. So I imagine Ashura would be the opposite way. She'd have a lot of defense, maybe not a lot of res. Yune is moderately fast, not like super fast, but it would be nice to see Ashura being like super duper slow, but maybe having like a ton of attack. Now Yune is all about debuffing. Whenever she debuffs, she gets, you know, that skill which allows her to automatically do a follow-up attack and grants extra attack. So either it would be cool if Ashura would be like a buffer that buffed her team, or maybe she could remove debuffs on her team. Like maybe she had a skill called like Order Manifest, which like at the start of turn dispels all stat debuffs or something on Ashura and nearby allies or something, so that she would directly counter Yuna's ability. It'd be kind of cool to see, honestly. But she would definitely be slow. I think that would be a thing that she would have. Maybe like a skill that will allow her to double whenever she gets attacked. Now, flying units aren't usually very good on enemy phase, so maybe it would make more sense for her to just be an infantry unit, or maybe an armor. Like, they could make her armor. You never know with heroes. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but they could certainly do that. So, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, but I think out of all the units on this list, I think this one is very likely to be a future mythic hero. Up next, at number 40, we have everyone's favorite wolf boy from Radiant Dawn, VOLUG. Or is it VOLUG? VOLUG? I don't know how you pronounce his name. But he's the wolf that follows Micaiah around in Act 1. And VOLUG is an interesting unit. Kind of like Vika would be a poor man's Naysala. I imagine he'd be sort of like a poor man's Nyla, maybe a 4-star beast unit. He'd be a blue infantry beast, of course, just like Nyla. But the thing about Volug, what made him an interesting unit in Radiant Dawn, was that he had the ability to half shift. While other Legus required to build up their gauge before they could go into battle, and then their gauge would slowly deplete after they transformed, Volug had an ability called Wild Heart, which would allow him to stay transformed indefinitely, and he could transform at the start of the battle, but he would only gain half the bonuses. It would be kind of nice to see this added into the game in some way or form. Maybe just have a beast unit that transforms at the start of the map and just never goes out of his wolf form, but maybe make his ability a little weaker. Now, when Nyla transforms, she essentially gains Wrath. She gets 2 attack, and whenever her special triggers, she deals 10 extra damage. That's sort of her transformation bonus. It would be kind of cool to see Volug just, again, stay transformed all the time, but maybe only get 5 damage when the special triggers, or something like that. I don't know, be a nice little nod to his unit, because I think his half shift is a big part of his gimmick in Radiant Dawn, and again, I think that they should do whatever they can to incorporate a unit's gimmick into the Fire Emblem games they are in, into heroes, essentially. So, I don't know how they do that, but it'd be interesting to see. Up next, at number 39, we have the guy behind everything, another Tellius unit. It's SEPHIRAN. So SEPHIRAN is a bit of an interesting unit, I think. You can unlock him as a playable character in Radiant Dawn if you play on a New Game Plus save file and also perform a bunch of tricky objectives, and he'll come equipped with a staff in the final battle against Ashnaard. Now, as far as where to place him, he could either be a mythic hero or he could be just a regular banner unit. I think both would work for him. And as far as his typing, I mean, he could use all forms of magic in the game, so honestly, he could be either a blue, green, or red mage, but I think it would make most sense to make him into a staff user, honestly. He came equipped with the ASHNARD staff, which will allow him to globally heal everyone and restore their status effect. Sounds a bit OP in Heroes, but I think they could make a lighter version of this, where he heals the unit and maybe like AoE heals a little bit on every other unit around it, and maybe clear status effects in an area of effect, either around the unit or around himself. I think that would make a lot of sense, honestly. Sounds a bit OP maybe, because there's a lot of debuffing going on in the game, and having a healer capable of just like removing multiple debuffs at once may sound a little OP, but hey, I mean, he is SEPHIRAN. They should make him special in some way, I think. Up next, at number 38, we have another Tellius unit. This time we're going to the Dawn Brigade and taking a look at Edward, the Myrmidon from Radiant Dawn. Now, Edward is a popular unit, I think, in the fandom. I mean, he's on this list, so that should say something. But, you know, the Dawn Brigade is notoriously infamous for being really, really bad and not worthwhile to train at all. But I think Edward is sort of like the sole exception. He is one of the units in the Dawn Brigade that can actually turn into a pretty decent late-game True Blade. At least I have always had a lot of positive experiences with Edward, because he starts out very frail and he doesn't hit particularly hard, but he does have a very high strength and speed growth, so if those get going early, he can actually become really good. And, you know, I think he's a unit that's kind of worth investing a little bit into. As for a unit in Heroes, like, he'd either be a 4-star demote or he'd just be a regular, you know, Red Sword Infantry. Don't really know what you would do with him. I feel like there's a lot of competition for Red Sword Infantry units. It's kind of hard to make him stand out. He could just sort of be a good fodder unit, I guess, with like Fury, Wrath, and Moonbow. I don't know. I really don't know what you do with him as a unit, honestly, to make him stand out in any way, because he is sort of generic, but I don't know. It would be kind of funny to see, I guess. Up next, at number 37, we have Miriel the Mage from Awakening. Again, it's a lot of Awakening characters on here. Now, Miriel, I don't really know what to do with her. Like, she'd probably be like a red infantry tome. I think she is incredibly unappealing. Probably one of the most unappealing female characters in Awakening as a whole. I really don't see what people see in her. The whole, like, snobby, all-knowing, really arrogant sort of librarian, just, it really, really doesn't mesh with me at all. I've never used her in Awakening. I hate her design. I dislike her voice. Every time she speaks, I just go, ugh. All her supports are super annoying. So as far as her skills, I really don't give a shit. Next up, at number 36, we have Limstella the Sage from Blazing Sword. She is sort of the cool, detached morph that follows Nurgle around and you fight her on the Dread Isle. So while Sonya is all about infiltration and seduction, Limstella is just really, really powerful. I think Nurgle uses her to steal a lot of quintessence. She's basically just a killing machine. So I imagine Limstella would probably get a lot of solo skills. Like Sonya, I'd make her a colorless mage for sure. And I think she'd have like a crap ton of rest and magic. Maybe she'd be fast too, I don't know. But I think like a skill like Glacius would work well on her. And just like a mage that hits like an absolute truck. I think that would really, really categorize her well. And just being good when she's on her own. I think that's how I would build her as a hero's units. Next up, at number 35, we have a character that I'm honestly very surprised hasn't shown up yet. It is Deke the Mercenary in Binding Blade. I thought for sure we were going to get him on the previous banner, but then we got Echidna instead. And honestly, I kind of get that, because Echidna's really cool. With Deke, you could either make him a red sword infantry or a green axe infantry. Again, we just got Echidna on the previous Binding Blade banner, so getting sort of another green axe hero would kind of feel a bit repetitive, but I feel like it would honestly fit him better to wield an axe in his artwork than a sword, especially considering there's a lot of competition for red sword units. As a unit, I think he'd be just super tanky. Maybe fast and tanky, be a cool combination. I mean, again, he'd probably be kind of similar to Echidna, I imagine. He'd have a shit ton of defense, he'd hit really hard, and probably be like an enemy face unit. That's what I think they do with Deke. But again, they could go the other way around too. Again, you gotta be careful not making him look too similar to Echidna, but at the same time, it would be interesting to see what they could do with him. I also foresee him probably being like a 4-star demote. Up next, at number 34, we have everyone's favorite fuckboy. It's Sane the Cavalier from Blazing Sword. I'm honestly very surprised Sane and Kent are not in the game yet. I imagine they're a pretty iconic Christmas Cavalier duo for most players. I don't know how many people have played Blazing Sword, but it was the first game that a lot of us got into, and Kent and Sane are also units that I think a lot of people just used on their first playthrough. So again, I don't really know what they do with Sane though. He'd definitely be another blue lance cav, and we have a lot of those. There are no skills in Heroes that synergizes with characters' genders. I don't think there is a mechanic in the game that classifies the gender of a person, but it would be really cool, I think, if Sane got bonuses whenever he's next to a female or close to a female. I imagine that'd be something cool that they could run with if they actually starts to gender the heroes and have skills that synergizes with gender, so you can have skills like Democell and stuff like that. But yeah, Sane would definitely either have a skill that would grant him bonuses when he charges a unit at full health, kind of similar to how Percival works, because, you know, he's all about the heroics and stuff like that. But it would be cool, you know, just give him some bonuses whenever he's supported with a female or something along those lines. It would be very nice to see. Up next, at number 33, we have another Blazing Sword character, Guy the Myrmidon. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, who's Guy? Do you mean Guy? I'm pretty sure that it's pronounced Guy. Guy is French, and similar to how Camus is actually pronounced Camus. And by the way, in Heroes, they do say his name that way. Faye literally called him Camus in a Heroes Direct. So I think they would also call him Guy, because it's French, and they have a tradition of pronouncing names properly based on their origins. Anyway, Guy, he'd obviously be a red sword infantry, and as I said, we have a lot of those. He'd probably be really, really fast, come with a slaying edge, have some sort of skills that do a lot of damage, probably like Glimmer or Dragon Fang or something along those lines. I imagine he'd just have a lot of attack. As far as anything else, I don't really have any other creative ideas for Guy. There's just not a lot of things to say about him. He's like a swordsman that likes to fight. He has a killing edge. That's pretty much it. Kind of be maybe similar to Rutger in certain ways. Maybe it'd be like a Tempest Trial unit. I don't know. Up next, at number 32, we have Stefan, the Swordmaster from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. He's a bit of an Easter egg character in both of the games. You recruit him by stepping onto a desert tile, and he'll sort of just pop up and go like, hi, and then he'll recruit himself. So Stefan is a character that's pretty good. He's definitely at his best in Path of Radiance. In Radiant Dawn, I think he joins a little bit too late to be useful, but he can certainly be used there too. So Stefan, as a unit in Heroes, he'd be a red sword unit. Obviously, you can't really make him into anything else. And he definitely have to come with Astra, because that's sort of his skill. Now, he came with a sword called the Veikari. It wasn't his personal sword. It was just a really strong S-rank sword that anyone could use, but he came equipped with it, and he was able to use it from the get-go. And it would give him a lot of defense. He wasn't a particularly tanky character, but I think the Veikari gave him like 3 extra points of defense, which certainly is nice. So I think I'd like to see Stefan as sort of like a tanky sword unit. A tanky, fast sword unit. He could have maybe like Res would be his dump stat. So I think the Veikari would either just give him a static defense bonus, or maybe like a defense bonus whenever enemy initiates combat. So maybe he'd be like an enemy phase Swordmaster. Be cool to see, definitely. Not sure how you'd make him viable, but you know, that's how I would do it at the very least. Coming in at number 31, it's another Awakening unit. Again, Awakening Fates Tellius. Those are the most 3 represented games here on this list. It is Flavia, the hero from Awakening. Or is it Flava? Flavia? Flavia? I don't know how you pronounce this name. Flavia is a unit that I really dig design-wise. I think she looks amazing. But I think that both her and Basilio, they got very overlooked in Awakening because they just joined so incredibly late. I actually like both of them a lot. They're really cool units. Flavia in particular looks amazing. And I'm pretty convinced that the design for Catherine in Fates was heavily inspired by Flavia. If you look at them side by side, they do really resemble each other. Flavia as a unit in Heroes, she could either be like a sword infantry or an axe infantry. I mean, she came with a higher sword rank than an axe rank, but she could use both weapons equally well. She'd probably come with Soul, I can imagine. I would imagine she'd be sort of like a fast, slightly tanky enemy face infantry units. She'd probably get some stances that give her either speed or defense when she gets attacked. And she'd probably, again, she'd have a lot of speed and defense. I think that would probably be her forte. She'd be kind of a little bit similar to Echidna, maybe, but a little faster. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Flavia. She's not a fantastically interesting unit. I'm not sure if they could do a lot with her, but I'm sure people would love seeing her in the game. Up next, at number 30, we have the Mad King ASHNARD. He is the final boss of Path of Radiance, and as a boss goes, he's actually pretty interesting because he chases you down, at least on the harder difficulties. He is quite terrifying because in Path of Radiance, he's actually immune to almost every single attack. Only the Royal Lagoose, Ike, and the dragons can hurt him. Everyone else, they try to attack him, you just get a little tink. because he has the armor blessed by the goddess, similar to the Black Knight in the story. Of course, they're not going to give him a skill that makes him invulnerable to everything but the Ragnell. That'd be silly, but I imagine that if ASHNARD makes it into the game, he'd be a very tanky flyer. He'd be a sword flyer for sure. You know, I know it's not possible to do this, but I think it would be cool if he was an armored flyer. I know that that's like intersecting move types, so that won't work, but it would be hilarious if they could add armored flyers to the game. I don't know if it would be good though, like a flyer that moves one space. Kind of sounds bad. I don't know, but I imagine he'd have a crap ton of attack and defense, but probably pretty low speed and res. And he'd probably have like a lot of skills that makes him better the lower HP is. He'd come with some sort of bracing skill for sure. In Path of Radiance on hard difficulty and higher, when you killed him for the first time, he would like go berserk and go into a sort of like a second form. So I think having a skill that sort of makes him really scary when he's super low on health, or maybe even sort of like a special skill that when he goes down, it's like a miracle that heals him up again a little bit and makes him super strong or something. I think that some sort of reference to his berserk mode would be really, really appreciated. He'd also, of course, come with his unique weapon, the Gurgurant or the Gurgurant. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's like the massive chainsword that he walks around with. It should definitely have distant counter built into it, because, you know, he could attack from a distance with his sword in Path of Radiance. Although, when they added Sephiel to the game, they didn't give his sword distant counter, even though he could attack from 2 range in that game. But it depends on whether or not ASHNARD's going to be a free unit or not. If he's like a Tempest Trial unit, they're not going to give him distant counter. If he's a banner unit, they will. So I imagine the Gurgurant would have like a built-in distant counter and probably a lot of might on it. I imagine ASHNARD would be sort of like a tanky enemy phase flyer. He should definitely come with some sort of skill. Maybe like he comes with the Laren's medallion that negates his arrow weaknesses and gives him some sort of special effect when he's low on health. And so the point of ASHNARD is sort of like a flyer that you can send into enemy ranges and just have him tank a bunch of hits. I think that would be a pretty cool concept. I'm not sure if we have any other flyers like that at the moment. I mean, we have a couple, like Minerva's pretty tanky. You can build sort of like a very tanky Florina, I guess, if you merge. But it would be cool to just like have a juggernaut sword flyer, and I think ASHNARD would be a very interesting unit if they did decide to bring him into the game. Up next, at number 29, we have a Sacred Stones character. We have Null, or as I used to call him back in the day, Knoll. Null is a shaman that joins around like the midway part of the game, and for many players is considered kind of a shit unit, but I actually find him really good in that you can early promote him to a summoner, because I think he joins at level 10 with the Guiding Ring, so you can just give him his own Guiding Ring and turn him into a summoner, and you have one of the most OP classes in the entire game. I really think Null is a fun unit to use. I really like him, but I remember when Erica's ult came into the game, the Shadow Erica, Amnesia's lady, or whatever she's called. She actually came with the Gleipnir, and a lot of people got really pissed at that because they really felt like that spot should have gone to Null. I don't even know why she came with that tome. I think it was a reference to a glitch, but don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly what the reference is, but I think via some sort of glitch you could get Erica to wield the Gleipnir, and that's why she got added as an ult. But a lot of people got pissed at that because they were like, come on man, like just add Null, we want Null, why do you keep giving us ults? There was a time a couple of years back when they would just roll out ults after ults after ults. It was like Fates, Royals, Camilla, Erica and Ephraim, they would not stop with the goddamn ults, and people got really tired of it. And to their credit, they have gotten a lot better at this. 2019 have been an amazing year for banners, and they've rolled out a lot of original characters. I mean, like, on my original list, I think 40 out of the 50 characters on that list have been added to the game. So they've done a good job adding new characters to the game. But Null, definitely think he should be added. They should just give him the Gleipnir. It's in the game. It would suit him, honestly. I think it would work just fine. I imagine he could be similar to Erica, just on foot. He'd be a red tome for sure. And, I don't know, probably be a little slow. But have a lot of res, probably a lot of attack, and I think he would just work. He could honestly be like a 4-star pull. I think that would honestly be fair for him. Up next, at number 28, we have the villager girl from Fates. We have Mozu. Mozu joined really early on in all 3 routes, once you beat her Paralog, and she was very much meant to be sort of the spiritual successor to Donal. She's a villager that you can train from 0 to hero. She comes with aptitude. Although I felt like Donal was a lot more powerful in Awakening once you started training him. Mozu, she didn't really snowball as hard. They nerfed aptitude a lot, and she didn't have as good growth rates, but she could become a pretty serviceable unit if you took your time to train her, though I seldom bothered, especially in Conquest, where experience skins are so limited anyway. She'd come, I think, either as a blue infantry lance, or she could theoretically also be an archer, I think, because that's a very popular path for her to take in Fates. I know that at least in Conquest, you don't get a lot of archers, so mostly can fill a role that you normally don't get very easily. As far as how she'd be in Heroes, I really don't know. She'd probably just kind of similar to Donald, maybe a little bit more power crept since she's newer, but I definitely also see her being added as sort of like a 3 and 4 star some pool units. I think she could probably work out pretty well in that regard. Up next, at number 27, we have another Tellius character. We have Boyd, and I'm honestly very surprised that Boyd has not been added to the game yet, considering, you know, he is from the Grail Mercenaries. He's available both in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, and he is the favorite of a lot of players. Boyd, I think, would be, you know, he'd be a standard axe-wielding infantry unit, but I would say like a player-faced glass cannon for sure. Maybe Brave Axe, maybe, you know, Slaying Axe. I don't know. He'd be a unit you send in, tons of attack and speed, not a lot of defense and resistance, and just hope he kills the enemy before they kill him. Maybe like a Fire Sweep Axe would work on him. I don't know. Something reckless, something fun. I think he'd be a cool unit. Up next, at number 26, we have Princess Nina from the Arcania games, and I'm very surprised to see her so high up on the lists. Like, obviously she has a really gorgeous design, she's hot as fuck, but she's not really a playable character in any of the games. She's kind of like there, she's a very central character in Shadow Dragon. Marth talks a lot with her, so I guess that's why she has a lot of popularity, I guess. She still shows up as sort of like a playable character towards the end of Fire Emblem Pre-Book 2 as well as Fire Emblem 12, but you only talk to her and get her for like the last few turns, so it's not really you can't really classify her as a playable unit. Like, she's not really, but she is, again, very important to the plot. So how would you make Nina? I mean, she's a bishop in the games, so I assume she'd be a staff user. She could maybe be a blue tome user, possibly, if you want her to, but I think like a staff user would make most sense to her, and she'd probably be like a buffer, I think. She'd be a buff unit. Lots of buffs on her, you know, just increase the stats of her allies around her. Maybe, you know, in the story she gives the Fire Emblem to Marth, which is a shield, so maybe it would make sense for her to carry the Fire Emblem and have it be some sort of skill that she can activate. I don't know. It would be kind of kick-ass if she was like a healer, but with a special activation skill called the Fire Emblem, which like buffed everyone around her or something. I think they could do a lot of fun stuff with Nina, and obviously her art would be fucking gorgeous. I mean, she's already pretty stacked in her official art, so you know they really ump that up in Heroes. So I'd personally be very excited if we saw Nina in the game for obvious reasons. Up next, at number 25, we have another Tellius character. Surprise, surprise, it is Astrid from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. And here's a unit I'm very surprised they haven't put in the game yet, because Astrid is a really popular character. She's kind of shy and cute, so people obsess a lot over her, and she's also a underleveled unit with very high growth rates and Paragon, so she's easy to train from 0 to hero. So people really obsess over her, and honestly I think she'd be really popular if they put her into the game. Now, she's a bow cav, so obviously she'd be a bow cav as well in Heroes, but honestly, it would be cool if they made her a blue bow cav, because I don't think we have a blue bow cav in the game yet. We have some green bow cavs, but blue bow cavs we have not seen yet, and, you know, her color scheme is sort of bluish, so maybe, I don't know, I'm kind of colorblind, so I'm not good at this, but I think, like, a blue bow cav would be kind of cool for her. As far as her stats, she'd probably be just really fast, I can imagine. And, you know, there's no really Paragon equivalent in Heroes. Maybe she come with like bow experience or something. I mean, just to sort of like a nod to her having, you know, her leveling up fast. Definitely some sort of experience skill that allows her and her allies to level up faster. Up next, at number 24, we have Luthier from Echoes, or Ryuto as he was known in Gaiden with the old translation patch. Luthier is a kind of a cool character. I like him a lot. He came with Excalibur, you know, Alm's route doesn't really have a lot of mages, so if you didn't promote any of the villagers, he'll be your first mage. And he's a lot of fun to use because he crits a lot and stuff like that. I always liked Luthier, and I thought they gave him a really cool personality in Echoes. I love how he was kind of like oblivious to social cues and how Delphia kept making fun of him for not having friends. It was kind of sad, honestly. Luthier, I imagine, would definitely come with some sort of Excalibur tome. There's a lot of different versions of Excalibur in the game, so I don't know which one he'd come with. Maybe like one unique to him. But I imagine he'd be, I don't know, for some reason I just think his BST would be really poor. I don't really know why. They have a tendency to treat mages like him kind of poorly. Canos. So I don't know, I think Luthier would just have really shitty stats and like a cool tome, probably. That's sort of what I predict. As for what I would want, I don't know. Some sort of hard-hitting mage. I think he'd be a bit of a glass cannon, obviously. Definitely a red tome. Or maybe a green tome. I'm actually not sure what he would be. Excalibur? That's kind of green, isn't it? I mean, we've seen many different versions of Excalibur, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. But yeah, a green or a red infantry tome mage with shitty BST. That's probably what I predict Luthier would get. Up next, at number 23, we have another Echoes character. We have the priestess Tatiana, who you have to rescue from Nuibaba's abode. She's the lover of Seek, and she's an optional character, actually. You don't need to get her. You can actually skip the abode if you want to, and some people actually do, because it's really hard. Tatiana is a very interesting unit. She is, first of all, her redesign is absolutely gorgeous. She's super hot. I really like what they did with her in Echoes, and... like, there's something, I don't remember if she's, like, super good or anything. She has a couple of spells that are kind of handy also, right? I think Mecha put her on his, like, good-bad unit list, if I remember correctly. Because she's kind of bad, and she's not really worth the hassle. But she does have a couple of spells, like Fortify, which makes her sort of useful. As for a unit, I feel like they would probably either make her a staff unit or, like, a blue tome. I also feel like they would completely fuck up her stats like they did with Silk. Like, Silk had no defense in Echoes or Gaiden, and yet she had, like, a ton of defense in Heroes. So I feel like they don't really understand Echo Scrolls, so they'd probably give Tatiana, like, a massive pool of defense or something, because she has, like, boob armor or something, even though she's the squishiest unit ever in the game. That's what I predict they'll do. As far as her skills and stuff, I don't know, probably some sort of AoE healing. I don't really know what they could do with her, but she definitely sort of be like a buffer in a supportive units. Up next, on number 22, is a character who I honestly have no idea why they made it this far up the list. It's ARETE from Fire Emblem Fates. She is the mom of Azura, and she shows up in Revelation as a boss, like for 1 or 2 chapters, and she's kind of hardly present in the game at all. In many ways, though, ARETE kind of already exists spiritually in the game because Ashura, the Valette songstress, you know, the flying dancer who everyone loves because of her ability to increase movement speed when she dances, that is very much designed around ARETE's design. Like, ARETE, like, Ashura is meant to dress up as her mother, so in a way you could kind of say we have ARETE in the game already, but I don't know if that's why she's so popular, or if it's just because a lot of people who voted on this event played Fates, and they just remember her, and so she gets, like, familiarity points. Because, honestly, she's kind of a shitty character. Like, I really feel like they could have done a lot more with Asura's mother. Now, if they were to add ARETE into the game, I think they should just give a massive middle finger to the fan base and just give her the Grey Waves dance and make her a mounted dancer. We haven't had a mounted dancer yet. I think it's going to show up at some point. They're really holding off on it, I think because they know how broken it's going to be for a dancer to move 3 spaces and be able to dance. But I think they should just do it anyway. Just make her like Asura, Valette Songstress, but make her a mounted unit. She'd be complete cancer. She'd make people hate the game, and it'd be so much fun. So if you are to add ARETE into the game, you might as well just go that route and just piss off everyone. Up next, at number 21, is a character that is not playable, but still adored by the fanbase. It is LEILA the Thief. The only thing she really does in that game is getting killed by Jafar and make people feel sorry for Matthew, because they're lovers. However, I do very much believe that LEILA was intended to be playable at some point. I mean, she has growth rates in the game's files, she has official artwork. I do believe that they really intended you to get her at some point, or maybe there was like an option to save her, but it got scrapped. Which is a shame, because LEILA's portrait and artwork is gorgeous. She's one of the most attractive characters I think they've ever made in Fire Emblem, like, seriously. If they added her into Heroes, I could definitely see them doing it just on the merit that she's gorgeous and she'd look great. And people would just pull her because she's pretty. So yeah, now as a Thief goes, I think it would be cool if she was somewhat similar to Matthew. I really don't know much about... I don't use a lot of dagger units, honestly. Like, they're probably the type of unit that I use the least. So I don't really know what she would have or how good she would be. Like, a more Powercraft Matthew, probably, with like a special refine, probably be a good thing. Maybe she could be like a red dagger or maybe a blue dagger, because, I don't know, we have a lot of colorless daggers already, and it'd be fun to see something new. So, yeah, I don't know. LEILA, be cool, honestly. She'd have great legs. Get Hakan to draw her, please. That's all I want. Up next, at number 20, we have another Tellius character. We have VOLKE, the thief/assassin from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. VOLKE is a big fan favorite. He's a bit edgy. His whole gimmick is that he always charges money for everything. He actually, in the game, if you have him open locks, he will charge you 50 gold per lock you open. And as I found out in my Path of Radiance Maniac mode playthrough, if you don't have the money, he won't open the chest, which, you know, at least Mecha enjoyed that a lot. It'd be funny, honestly, if when you summon Volk, he's like, 1 orb, you know, like every time you deploy him, he demands like a currency or something to be deployed. They would never do it, but it would be hilarious. Like, you need 50 red shards or something every time. I don't know, some garbage currency that you don't need. You just have to spend that to deploy him. That'd be fucking hilarious. I would love that so much. But again, they'd never do something like that. He'd probably just be really fast and have a lot of attack and probably not a lot of defenses. Be a bit of a glass cannon. Probably come with the pass skill. Yeah, some sort of smoke skill I think would probably be good on him as well. So yeah, Volk, 50 gold. Up next, at number 19, we have another Fates character. We have Scarlet. And oh my, Scarlet fans, you've had it rough, man. Scarlet is like a character that got so horribly treated in Fates. Like, people really loved her because she had a cool design, and she was one of the few characters that was not a royal or a retainer. And yet, she got completely shafted. I mean, in Birthright, she had this sort of like mini love plot going on with Ryoma, but because she was a Korin sexual and only had Korin supports, we never got to see where that went. And in Rev, you know, I would feel bad about spoiling this, but I don't give a shit about Rev, and you shouldn't play it. She dies. They just kill her, which I know pissed off Gast a lot. But still, despite that, she has really cool design, and people love her a lot. Again, because she's kind of unique and original. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of short-haired girls, but I do think that she looks really good with her hairdo. As far as in the game goes, I think that she'd probably be like an Axe Flyer, or maybe a Lance Flyer. I hope she'd be an Axe Flyer, because we have way too many Lance Flyers already. And she'd probably be pretty tanky, a lot of attack, but not a lot of speed and res. Honestly, I think they should just keep up the trend of pissing everyone off with Scarlet, so they should put her on a banner with 2 other trash units with the same color, so that in order to try and get her, you have to pull through a bunch of garbage. Because they've been sort of like showing the middle finger to Scarlet fans for years, so they should just keep up that trend in Heroes. They should also make it just really bad, so that, you know, anyone who likes Scarlet will be forced to like merge a shit unit. Up next, at number 18, we have a character that everyone loves to hate. It is Priam from Fire Emblem Awakening. Ike's descendants, that kind of felt shoehorned in there last minute. People really dislike this guy. Holy crap, there's so many discussions about this guy. How could Ike have had kids if he's gay with Soren? I don't get it. Oh, I don't know. It's almost as if you guys just made that up, and Ike isn't actually canonically gay, but you just want him to be, because the moment 2 people show affection for each other in a video game, they just get gay-shipped by everyone. Anyway, there's a couple of things that really bug me about the whole Priam argument. First and foremost, even if we assume Ike is gay, it's not like gay people can't have kids. They're not infertile. Second of all, even if Ike didn't have any kids, Mist could have had, and the Ragnar could have been passed down to them. Third of all, the Ragnar isn't bloodbound to Ike. It's not his inherited weapon. Ike just picked it up. He got it from Seljas initially, and then he got it from Sanaki in Radiant Dawn and just wielded it. Like, anyone theoretically can pick up the Ragnar if they have the weapon rank to use it. So even if Priam wasn't the descendant of Ike, he could have still found the Ragnar, picked it up, and used it. He could have just been a strong guy. So, yeah, I don't know. The whole Priam argument is dumb. Anyway, that's not why you're here. Priam in Heroes. I imagine that if they go with the whole descendant of Ike shtick, he would be sort of similar to Legendary Ike. He'd come with the Ragnar, probably either have the Ether skill or the Radiant Ether skill, and probably just be a very similar unit, I can imagine. Maybe more player-face focused as opposed to Legendary Ike, who's very enemy-face focused. Maybe he had more like offensive stats, I can imagine. But he'd probably be like a Red Sword Infantry with distant counter, because, you know, he is a descendant of Ike, so he should kind of be similar to a Legendary Ike, I think. Next up at number 17, we have another unit from the Tellius games. We have the Swordmaster Lucia from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, a Lynch's Retainer, and overall, pretty fucking hot sword lady. I mean, look at her. She is really, really pretty. Now, Lucia wasn't good in either of the games she was in my opinion, so I am fairly confident that if she were to make it into Heroes, she'd get the Carla treatments. Her basis would be insane, and her tits would be huge. That's pretty much how I see them adding Lucia. I mean, like, what is there to say about Lucia? She had, like, the parry skill in Path of Radiance, which allowed her to, like, ignore enemy terrain. I don't know if they could work that into her kit somehow, like, allow her to maybe, I don't know, the terrain doesn't really do much. Like, maybe she'd come with a skill that nullified the defensive bonus from defensive terrain. That'd be kind of interesting, honestly, because, you know, in many arena matches, there's a lot of defensive terrain in the middle, and, you know, there's a big strategy to take advantage of that, so maybe they could actually add parity into heroes and allow it to just ignore enemy terrain. I don't know how good that would be in the meta. I don't know if that's something that people would find useful. Maybe something, you know, could have some synergy with ether raids. I don't know. I'm just trying to give her something that would set her apart, because the way I see it now, if they add Lucia, she's just going to be another Carla. She's going to be really good, but there's not going to be anything special about her, I think. Up next, at number 16, we have another unit from the Arcanaya games. We have Sane, the Commando. Now, Sane is a very interesting unit. In the games that he's in, he is able to replicate one of your units for a set amount of turns. He copies their bases, as well as some of their abilities. Like, for example, if he transforms into Marth, he can wield Marth's Rapier. However, he doesn't copy their inventory, so you'll have to trade a weapon over to him. And I also don't think he copies HP. He copies all of their stats, but not their HP. So again, I think Mecha called him like a poor man's dancer, because he kind of works a little bit similarly to a dancer in that he allows your strongest unit to move twice. But of course, a dancer is better because then the unit will also get experience twice, and also allows one unit to move twice, which is better than having two units that can move once each. Like, there's definitely some merit to Sane in the games that he's in. Most casual players I don't think use him much, but there are some 0% growth strats and some LTC strats that utilize Sane, because it is kind of good to copy the strongest unit on your team. It gives you a lot of flexibility, especially if you don't really care about EXP. So, in Heroes, they have actually some potential to make a very interesting unit if they're able to move a little bit outside their comfort zone. They could just straight up give him an assist skill that does the same thing, replicates one of the units on your team. How this would work, I assume, would be like he moves over to them, he kind of acts like a dancer, but when he uses his assist skill, he turns into the unit he's replicating, taking all of their stats, maybe with the exception of HP if they want to keep it canonical. And then he'd have to copy their inventory, though, because there is no trade function in Heroes. So if he didn't copy their inventory, then it wouldn't work. So the question is, how OP would Sane be if he could do this? How OP would it be to have a unit that can transform into another one of your units? I think a lot of people, especially people who like really pour all of their resources into one unit, would really enjoy having two of those units. I don't know how good it would be, because of course you'd struggle with coverage. Like, you'd have, let's say you have a +10 sword unit on your team that you want to replicate. Well, you now have two sword units, but do you have enough coverage to actually match up the enemy against the enemy's team? So I don't know how good Sane would be if he could do this, but he'd certainly be interesting, and he would absolutely spark some discussion, and he'd be one of the more interesting units, I think, to come along in a long while if they actually did this. You know, maybe it would be super OP, maybe it wouldn't be that great. It would kind of depend, I think, on how he would work in the arena. I assume that, you know, he would use his BST, and I assume that untransformed his stats wouldn't be all that great, so maybe he would be kind of shit in the arena. I don't know, it really depends on how he would be designed. However, there is another way they could go with Sane, the lazy route. Like, I do believe in the later games they retconned him to be a divine dragon that just lost his stone, and that his transformation powers were sort of just like a residual thing that he could do without his dragon stone. So they could just turn him into a Manakite and just give him a divine stone and make it similar to Tiki. That is a route they definitely could do, and I could see them doing that, because let's be real here, the developers of Heroes are not very fond of moving outside their comfort zone. Just look how long it took them to add Legoose units to the game, because they just put it off because they didn't want to make new mechanics. And if they were to add Sane to the game, he would be very unique, and I just don't think they're brave enough to actually do something like that, even though I personally wish they would, because I think their inability to take risks is kind of what holds Heroes back these days. So yeah, Sane could be a really interesting unit if they add him, but I doubt they're going to do anything with him. They're probably just going to make him a Manakite. Up next, at number 15, we have Sairi, the Swordmaster from Awakening. I have basically nothing to say about this lady. Like, in all of my Awakening playthroughs, she just dies on the joining map to those knights, and I just never bother restarting for her. That's my relationship with Sairi, and her brother's kind of dumb. As a unit, I'm sure she'd get the Carla treatment. Huge tits and great BST. That's all I have to say, really. Up next, at number 14, we have the powerhouse from Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War, the Prince of Isaac, Shannan. And not Shannan, Shannan. Not the fake imposter, but the actual prince. And Shannan is a fucking beast of a unit. Like, he would just delete anything you threw him at in that game. Once he gets his Balmung, which he gets very early on, like right after he joins, I don't think there's like a single character in FE4 that just survives an encounter with Shannan. Like maybe Julius and Arvis and some of the latter bosses, but any generic enemy you throw Shannan at, he will just slay. It's absolutely hilarious. It's so much fun to send him through the arena and just watch him like cleave his way like a meat grinder through the gauntlet. In Heroes, he would definitely need to be strong, I think, to match this. Tons of attack, tons of speed, not a lot of anything else. He could be a bit of a glass cannon for like, I'd be okay with that. He could have really low resistance, defense, and hit points, but just like massive boatloads of attack and speed. The Balmung should just be like a weapon that just hits like a truck. And he should definitely have Astra as a skill, obviously, because that's sort of his signature ability. I don't really know what the Balmung would do, other than just hit really, really fucking hard. Maybe like, kind of like Ike has a Radiant Ether, which is like a better version of Ether. It would kind of be cool if Shannan had like a better version of Astra, like Radiant Astra, or I don't know, like something like an Astra with less cooldown on it, or maybe an Astra that deals more damage. It would be kind of funny just to have Shannan like just delete anything he attacks, but I'm completely fine with him just being super frail and dying, because he was sort of squishy in FE4. He had a lot of avoidance though, but if he got hit, he would usually die pretty fast. Up next, at number 13 on the list, we have a Fates character. We have DWYER. DWYER is the son of Jacob, the butler, and for me, I randomly picked him up in one of my playthroughs, and I think it was Rev, and I ended up liking him a lot, actually. Like, I did a spotlight on him because I thought it was a very interesting character. I liked his supports with Jacob, and I just overall really liked his design and the way he was as a unit. For many players, he'll be the first child unit you can get in Fates, because especially if you play as female core and you can pair up with Jacob really quickly, and you can get a pretty decent child unit a lot earlier than he otherwise would have. So he's very viable. As far as a unit, I believe he'd either be a mounted healer or he'd be like his father, he'd be like a dagger unit. Both would really suit him fine. If he was a mounted healer, I would definitely like to give him a staff that would debuff the enemy in some way. I feel like a reference to his slappy face would have been really cool, like a dagger called slappy face. I would actually love that. That'd be hilarious. You'll get that if you watch his supports. He canonically likes to sleep a lot, so it would be cool if he had like a sleep staff that put enemies to sleep when he attacked them. I know that's not a thing that's in Heroes, but I wish that it was. I think status effects would be a really cool way to spice up that game, like being able to put enemies to sleep and silence them and stuff like that. I would really like that. So something along those lines would have been pretty cool for DWYER, I think. Coming in at number 12, we have the dragon ANANKOS, and he's sort of like the big final boss of Fates Revelation. He's the guy that's behind everything. And I do believe he's sort of like a time dragon or something along those lines. I must admit, I'm not that good when it comes to Fates lore. I kind of just zone out a lot when because I don't really care. But it's kind of interesting. And ANANKOS would be a fun mythic unit, I think. He'd definitely be a dragon. I don't know if he'd be like pre-madness ANANKOS or like post-madness ANANKOS, where he looks like a basketball. I hope not, because I really don't like his mad design. But it would be cool to see sort of like an ANANKOS before he went crazy kind of thing. And considering he has like powers over time, there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do about that. Like obviously you could just make skills that sort of debuffs him when he's slow or fast or whatnot, but personally I think it would have been cool if whenever you have an ANANKOS on the field, you can use Light's Blessing once per battle without paying for it. Like I think that personally would be kind of cool, because he can turn back time and stuff, but they never do that because they don't like moving outside their comfort zone. They just probably make him into either a mythic or a he'd be a mythic for sure. Don't know what color he would be. Colorless maybe? Might be blue. I think colorless or blue would probably fit him pretty well. And I imagine, like, even though I don't like his design as a boss, I think it would kind of look cool in Heroes if they, you know, did the little basketball that spins around and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of cool things they could do with ANANKOS, and I could definitely see them adding him as a mythic unit. Coming up next at number 11, we have Urk from Blazing Sword, the mage, the one who joins really early on. He protects Sarah in the prologue, and then he escorts Priscilla later on, and he's sort of like almost the adoptive son of Pent and Louise. They kind of raised him as their own. Urk is a very popular character. I do believe for a lot of people he was probably one of the first mages they used if they started out playing FE7, and he is also a pretty viable one. If you put some training into him, he usually does pretty well in that game, and as a result he's also very popular here. And honestly, we haven't gotten a lot of Blazing Sword banners, but I think like an Etruria banner with Urk, Pent, Louise, and maybe like a Sarah ult or something would have been very well received by the community, so I do hope that will happen sometime in the future. As far as what he would do, like, I think he could either be a red or blue mage, honestly. Either one would work for him. He comes with a Thunder Tome, I think a Fire Tome in the prologue and the Thunder Tome later, so either one would work really well for him. I could definitely see him being either like a 3 or 4 star demote, like added to the summoning pool, or a Tempest Trial unit. Both would honestly work just fine for him. As far as what skills he would have, like, he's such a generic mage, I don't really know what to give him. He could just be like a standard tome infantry. That I don't really got anything. You guys can help me out on this one. So now we move on to number 10 on the list. So we are officially entering top 10 here. Blazing Knight territory, as some would call it. At number 10, we have... Oh, no, God. Fucking, I don't understand this. I don't understand this one at all. It's fucking KRIS from Fire Emblem 12, like the avatar. I swear to God, guys, like... Okay, so first of all, this must be the only instance where a male avatar is actually more popular than a female one, because female KRIS is at number 45 on this list, so male KRIS is actually considerably more popular. Now, I've already said what I think about the avatar plenty of times. I hate the avatar in that game, and I honestly don't know what he'd be. Like, I guess in his official art, he does wield a sword, so it would make sense to make him like a red infantry sword or like a cav or something. But I don't think they're going to add KRIS to the game. I don't, even though he is obviously pretty popular, I just don't know what they'd make him, and he's, I don't know, the game, while it's probably a lot more popular in Japan than it is in the West, and obviously popular enough to net him on the 10th spot on this list, I just don't see them adding KRIS. He doesn't really have a big presence in the fandom, in my opinion, and I just don't see them adding him. But if they do, I imagine he'd be somewhat similar to Corrin. Up next, at number 9, we have a Blazing Sword character. We have the old man himself, ATHOS. And I have said multiple times that I think ATHOS would have been a kick-ass mythic hero. I hope we get him on a banner. It would definitely be amazing to see, you know, old grandpa kicking ass. As far as how he would be as a unit, I mean, he could really be any type of mage, but I think like a red tome infantry would work best for him. You could just give him the 4-blaze. The 4-blaze is in the game, but I think honestly ATHOS would deserve his own version of the 4-blaze, like the epic 4-blaze or the astral 4-blaze or something. I think if you just put the 4-blaze tome on him, that's gonna be kind of boring, honestly. But you know, I wouldn't be sad if they did it either. But I think he would maybe deserve his own personal weapon. As far as his stats goes, I do believe that ATHOS would sort of be like, he'd have tons of attack and res and nothing else. He'd be like a one-hit wonder, like a one-shotter, you know? And just be sort of like, just roast people. Maybe even have like a special proc skill that just eliminates the enemy's resistance or something. I don't know. I wouldn't mind if they made him a little OP. Up next, at number 8, we have a character from Fire Emblem 4 and Fire Emblem 5. We have Zed, or in some fan translations, he's also known as Seti, the Sage. Now, Zed is canonically the son of Erinris and Luan. In Fire Emblem 4, he is always the son of Erinris because children are tied to their mothers in that game, and he can theoretically be the son of any father from the first generation, but in Thracia he did show up with the Forseti tome, so that sort of indicates that Luan x Erinris is the canonical pairing. In FE4 they also had a conversation in Celestia where they instantly fell in love to talk to each other, so it was obvious that that was the canonical pairing they wanted to go for. So that's how I think he should show up in Heroes as well. He should definitely wield the Forseti tome. I think he should be similar to his father, very fast. He should probably come with a few other skills, maybe some buff-worthy skills, because, you know, he is a leader in Thracia, like he leads the Magi squad. He's a lot more honorable than his father. He should definitely wield the Forseti tome, although again, I feel like he should get his own version of it, like the Regnal Forseti, or the Heroic Forseti, or the Astral Forseti, or something, you know, just something to make him a little different from his father. Like, I wouldn't mind if he just got the Forseti tome either, but it would be nice if they did something to make him stand out from Luan, so he doesn't just feel like Luan 2.0 with Power Crept BST. But yeah, no, would definitely love to see that in the game. He's an absolute beast, and yeah, be interesting to see what they would do with him. Up next, at number 7 on the list, is another genealogy character. It is Larsa, the sword fighter that joins in the 2nd generation. She is the daughter of Ira, and whoever you want to pair Ira up with. There's not really a super canonical pairing. I suppose Ira x Lex would be maybe one of the more canonical ones. At least that's what it is in the manga. I think one of the reasons why Larsa is so popular is because depending on who the player paired Ira with, it really defines the start of the next generation. Like, I don't think Ira's a very strong unit, but at least she has Astra. And Astra is a lot of fun for newer players because, you know, it procs, she hits a lot of times, and it's fun to do the arena with her and whatnot. And I think Larsa is, of course, one of the first units you get in the 2nd generation, and she inherits the Astra. And she also inherits whatever skills her father had. So you can make some really busted kids by, you know, if you pair up with Lex, you get like a really tanky Larsa who has Paragon and Astra. It's a lot of fun to use. You know, you can pair Larsa up with Noish to give her, or sorry, you can pair Ira up with Noish to give Larsa critical, so she crits while Astrang, which just looks insanely funny. So a lot of people, I think Larsa is just like a really cool introduction to the second generation, and as a result, people really like her. Also, she's pretty. You know, she's really pretty. She has really cool design. I personally like her substitute a lot better, but hey, I'm a sucker for the substitutes, and it would be nice to see some of them on this list, honestly. Anyway, Larsa, as a unit in Heroes, definitely would be like, there's no other way to make her other than a red infantry, and it'd be kind of hard to make her stand out. I mean, she'd be similar to her mother for sure. Maybe a little bit faster, or maybe a little bit slower actually, but better in other areas. I don't really know what kind of skills you'd give Larsa, honestly, because depending on how you pair her up in FE4, she doesn't really have any canonical skills that really define her. But, you know, just a good red sword infantry with good BSD would probably make most people happy, honestly. Up next, at number 6 on the list, we have another Fates character. We have Forests. Forests? That is it's like with 2 R's. I don't know if you like put emphasis on the R's, but he's the son of Leo. And I don't really have much of a relationship with Forrest. I just know he's like the cross-dresser of that game, kind of like Lucius and Libra. It's like, ho ho, he is a boy, but he looks like girl. Ooh. The only thing I remember from Forrest from Fates was that, you know, Gasak shows up in his paralogue, the boss that Gast loves, and we weren't wanting to capture him, so I had to play the paralogue. Forrest, I think if he were added to the game, he'd definitely be a mounted healer. Again, his personal skill revolved around like doing extra damage to males, I think. I mean, I think his skill was called Fierce Counter, and so he added 2 extra damage whenever he was attacked by a male unit. So that's a thing they could maybe bake into his kit if they ever allow for like gendered skills, which I definitely think they should. It'd be a lot of fun. If not, he'd just be a generic mounted healer. That's pretty much how I think he'd be added. Up next, at number 5, we have a Fates character. We have the Dark Magician Nyx, the old woman who's trapped inside the body of a young girl. Oh no, what shall I do? Oh no. You know, the classical one. However, I will say that unlike Naui, who's a very distasteful character, Nyx is actually a pretty cool character. Guess did a support science on her, and I actually agree with a lot of the things he said. Nyx is a pretty cool character. She's not a retainer or royal, which automatically sets her apart. She's actually a green unit that you recruit, and there's not a lot of those. That's not why I like her, though. I think that her supports are kind of cool, and it's never really, like, the fact that she's young is actually baked into her story arc in a cool way. It's never like a comic relief kind of thing. She actually tries to find a way to end the curse rather than just acting like an eternal lolly, which I think is kind of cool. And her outfit, I mean, that's more to blame for how dark mages just look in that game than anything, but you know, she is what she is. Now, as far as being added to Heroes, I'm very surprised she hasn't been added yet, honestly, because she's like the lolly character, and the Japanese love their lollies, so, you know, it wouldn't make sense to just add her in there, because her art would probably make me really uncomfortable. But as a unit, honestly, can we just get Nosferatu tomes in the game? Is that too much to ask for? Like, is that too OP? Can we get tomes that self-heal? Like, because we have the Absorb Staff that heals the caster when doing damage, and I understand why it's a little OP to have a tome be able to do the same thing, but hey, it would be cool. Like, you could put some restrictions on it. You can make it heal for half the damage you deal, maybe, kind of like the real Nosferatu does. You could make it so that, you know, it has less might on it. I don't know. Overall, I think it would be cool to have Nosferatu tomes added to the game, and I think it would be cool to have one on Nyx. You know, just have her be like a very fast. She'd be very fast, obviously. She'd have to be very squishy. So I'm not sure if a Nosferatu tome would necessarily synergize with her kit, because she definitely would not be durable. She'd be a glass cannon. But still, I don't know. I'd like to see Nosferatu into the game. So could we have that, please? That'd be great. Up next, at number 4 on the list, we have a character from Blazing Sword. We have Wrath, the Nomad. Why do people like Wrath? He's so boring. Jesus Christ. Well, I guess it's because he has a cool design, and people like nomads, and, you know, he comes in and saves Lynn, and blah, 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 and he's, like, all cool and stuff. I suppose that's why people like him. I think it's kind of boring, but, hey. I assume in the game he'd be either a colorless vocab or a green vocab. I mean, they added Sue, so honestly, I'm kind of surprised they haven't added Wrath yet. I don't know, he feels like a unit that should be in the game at this point. And, he'd probably be a bit of a glass cannon, like a lot of attack, a lot of speed. And I could also imagine he has like a lot of solo skills, because Wrath's whole gimmick is that he like fights alone. He's like a lone wolf. Oh, I'm so alone. So, you know, give him a bunch of solo skills and just have him be good whenever he's on his own, I think would work out pretty well for him. Yeah, either a brave bow or some sort of bow that just like kind of fire sweep bow or something. I don't know, like a unit that just comes in, deletes a unit, and then gets transferred and does it again. That'll work out for Wrath, I think. Up next, at number 3, so now we're moving into the top 3, guys, of characters who have not yet been added into Heroes, but that people desperately want, is Nils the Bard from Blazing Sword. He is the brother of Ninian, and in the game, they kind of like go back and forth a little bit. They're effectively the same unit. They transfer their powers in between each other. Well, Nils, how would you make Nils in Heroes? You would need to set him aside from his sister in some way. Like, I think they'd make him a mannequin dancer, even though we never actually see Nils transform in the game itself. That's probably what they would do, I think. What I would honestly like to see would be for him to have one of the special rings that you obtain, like Ninian's Grace, Thor's Ire, Seth's Litany. It would be really cool, honestly, if they just give him Fearless Might. Like a special dance that like buffs the attack of whoever he dances for by like a crazy amount. Buffs on dances are pretty common, but for him it would be cool if he just buffed one stat a lot instead of buffing like 2 stats a little bit. Aside from that, I don't really know what stats to give him. He'd probably be like a blue mannequin dancer. He doesn't necessarily need to be that different from Ninian. People just really want to see Nils in the game. So I think it's about time. We just need more Blazing Sword banners. Come on, give us some more Blazing Sword banners. Coming up next, on number 2 on the list of characters who have not yet been added into Heroes, who people love for some reason, and I really don't get what's wrong with you guys. Rinka? Really? Rinka from Fates? She's number 2? Really? Oh, Jesus Christ. Rinka is so fucking obnoxious. I hate this character. Like, she is so annoying. All of her supports are the same. Literally, copy-pasted. It's like, oh, I hate you, outsider. Fire tribe, not very fond of outsiders. People only like Rinka because they like muscles and she has abs. And that's the only reason why I can imagine she's so high on the list. Because her personality sucks. And also, her I don't think her performance as a unit in this is that great either. I think she's one of the worst units in Fates, and that's a pretty impressive feat when almost every unit in Fates is OP. So yeah, no, Rinka is just really fucking bad. I think she's awful. Yeah, no, I don't like her at all. There used to be this obnoxious idiot over at the Fire Emblem main, and he would always post Rinka art like all the fucking time. He'd make new threads with like tons of fan art about Rinka. And whenever there was a person who said like, she's not really my cup of tea, he would always go into like full rant mode where he'd be like, ooh, does she threaten your frail masculinity? Does she intimidate you? Do you find the prospect of a strong woman so hard to grasp? Oh, little poor frail masculinity getting challenged. He'd like, oh my god, he was so fucking obnoxious. He just like going to full rant mode on how like muscle chicks were the best. And if you didn't like muscle chicks, you were a cock and a frail, insecure idiot, and you were like a misogynist, and you didn't like strong women, and oh my god. And let me get this wrong, like I don't think there's anything wrong with liking a little bit of muscle on chicks. I can dig some abs on girls either, like Altina, but like Rinka is a little bit too shredded for me, and I just remember that guy being so fucking obnoxious, and he did this every day. He'd go until he started like picking on people who didn't like Rinka. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I hate her. I don't know. I just think she's really annoying. As a unit, I honestly wouldn't know what to do with her. She'd probably be a green unit, honestly. She wields clubs in Fates. There are no clubs, I think, in Heroes. Maybe she'd come with a hammer or something. I don't fucking know. Like, I don't give a shit about Wrinkle. Let's move on. And finally, on number 1 on the lists, the units that people want to see most in Fire Emblem Heroes that have not shown up in any form is Jill from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Why they haven't added her yet is completely beyond me. Everyone wants Jill. She is by far one of the most popular Tellius characters out there, and yet they just have not added her yet. And there's been a lot of Tellius banners, so I don't really know what they're doing. Just get Jill in there, seriously. So Jill, what honestly would be really cool would be if she was the polar opposite of Har. So Har was as a Tempest Trial unit a little while back, and he was, you know, he had a lot of attack and a lot of defense, but he was pretty slow and didn't have a lot of rest. So I think Jill should probably be the opposite. She should have a ton of attack and speed, maybe decent rest, but not as much defense, and then her hit points could be sort of like mediocre. While Har was an Axe unit, I think Jill would probably be a Lance unit. She could be an Axe unit too, obviously, because she could use Axes in Radiant Dawn, but in Path of Radiance, she did join as a Wyvern Knight and could only use Lances, so I think that would probably suit her a lot better, even though we have a lot of blue Lance Flyers in the game, honestly. I think that they should just really add Jill. Another cool touch would be if they added like 2 versions of Jill, one Path of Radiance version and one Radiant Dawn version. And the Path of Radiance version had like an effect that was effective against Legoose, whereas the Radiant Dawn version had like a skill that synergized with Legoose to like sort of show that Jill went from hating Legoose to actually liking them. I think that would have been a sweet little touch, but if they're just going to add one version, I think a Path of Radiance version with like a Beast Slayer would probably be the best course of action. Jill is just a super popular character. She's super pretty. She's gorgeous. She's good. She is used frequently. Just get her in there. Seriously. What are you waiting for? So yeah, that is it. The 50 most popular Fire Emblem characters who have not yet been added into Heroes. It's going to be very interesting to see how many of these characters make their way into the game in 2020. Judging by the last lists, I think we're probably very likely to see a lot of them if they follow the trend of adding characters that people voted on during Choose Your Legends. They've been really good in 2019, adding new characters and moving away from the constant alt spam that we saw in 2018. So I have good hopes that they will actually follow through and add a lot of these characters into the game. Personally, I just think alts are boring, and I don't think they add much excitement. It's always nice to see a new character get some recognition, especially when it's from one of the older games. And to their credit, you know, the banners have been spot on, so let's hope they continue that trend in 2020. You know, if Heroes isn't dead 2 years from now, I might make another video like this, and we'll see just how many more characters are yet to be added into the game. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this ridiculously long video. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed it, and I shall see you guys next time. Bye-bye.